area down here, and that'll be finished. It's a flat grade. It'll be finished with material that will allow for someone to move mobility devices along that. So be able to access the whole property basically.
So if we were to get, unfortunately, have hit with another Irene, what will this do?
So another Irene is, Irene's an extreme event. So
yeah, well, there's going to be a lot more extreme events.
We figure, we're estimating there'll be about 40 acre-feet of water storage in here when it's restored. Mm-hmm. So 40 acre-feet is, it's kind of an abstract term to get your head around, but it's, average of 4 feet of depth over 10 acres. Mm-hmm. So that's, a significant amount of water that can be stored on here during a flood event. What would happen, quite frankly, during another Irene event is this would get filled up fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't, have a really significant impact on downtown Brattleboro. What I think this is designed more for is those smaller storms in between the extreme Irene events. Like right now it's designed for a 10-year flood and a 100-year flood. So a flood that you would see recurring on average once every 10 years would fill up the area to about this line here, and then a larger flood would fill up the area from here to this part here. So, yes?
Was Irene considered a 500-year, or what was Irene?
Yeah, I don't...
it's about, at this particular segment, it was about a little bit less than a 50-year storm.
Okay.
Yeah. So another thing that this site will do during a flood event is, when the water comes kind of screaming down around the corner here,
right,
it'll slow down when it hits this area. And part of the function of this is for a place for like large woody debris, like trees that are coming down here, may have a chance to settle out in this area before they sort of come into the downtown area and clog up bridges and that sort of thing. So that's one of the natural floodplain functions, a place to collect that kind of debris coming down.
Could I ask a question, Brian? Yeah. Has the town that you're aware of have any plans for that William Street Bridge? I'm just thinking it was interesting because we had the project in West Brattleboro where they're getting rid of, the Brattleboro Housing Authority is getting rid of properties to try and reduce, and we discussed at that point that bridge over Western Avenue is a choke point, and I'm thinking this William Street Bridge is probably another choke point. Does the town have any discussion, or?
Which one, the Elliott Street one downstream of it, or the?
No, the one upstream.
Upstream of it. I think one of those bridges has a sediment plug, which is a project that's been identified for mitigation, but beyond that, I haven't
What is
seen
sediment plug?
It's clogged up with sediment underneath it.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious because it's interesting how, we had the Brattleboro Housing Authority that's doing some flood mitigation upstream. You folks are coming in with this proposal for flood mitigation. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just curious if the town has some thoughts about those bridges as being sort of choke points when there are flood events.
Yeah, well, most of the damage was, there was a lot of damage downstream of that and made the road impassable, but
okay. Yeah, I remember the damage on William Street that was upstream of this.
Yeah.
And also right in that general area.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the most, immediate damage reduction from this project will be along William Street on this side. Because right now the river because it's filled in here, the river stays in its channel during its high events, and there's a lot of energy that gets pushed against this outside of this curve right here. Mm-hmm. So by having this broader area for the river to kind of flow into, it'll reduce a lot of that energy and hopefully reduce that impact on right where William Street goes, right along the river line there.
Can you talk about your landscaping plan?
Yeah, so right now the plan is to, there's some existing large trees along the bank here. And we're hoping, and we believe that we can leave a lot of those trees when we reduce the elevation. We'll have to play it a little bit by ear, to see if we need to leave little soil islands around the trees. But those trees are, we recognize the importance of those, both to help stabilize the bank, but also to provide shade for the river. So that's another, kind of one of our ecological goals, is to keep these rivers shaded and keep the water temperatures down. So these larger trees along here, we are definitely going to try and retain. Revegetating the site after the excavation work is done, the simplest thing is to plant it with some kind of conservation mix, which is a type of mix of grass seed, and that comes in quickly, provides some immediate kind of stability to the soil. One of the challenges with this site will be how to control the Japanese knotweed that's likely to invade the site afterward. And I don't have a great answer for that, because nobody has a great answer for that. There are some places where if you can sort of deal with the knotweed before it gets established, then other species can come in and compete with it. There's no guarantees. So we're very aware of that aspect of revegetating a site like this. So I don't know exactly how we're going to treat that, but that's something we'll definitely work with the town on and work with other folks on to come up with some kind of a revegetation system that helps reduce that initial kind of invasion of the Japanese knotweed, and in the long run allows what would be ideally some kind of a floodplain forest to evolve in here. I mean, that's what it was before it was developed. It was a floodplain forest. And if we can, over decades, get it back to that, then that would be ideal. We also know that there's a lot of interest in the kind of the passive recreational use of this area. So we want to have an open dialogue with the community about kind of like, should there be some areas kept open and maybe mowed periodically for people to throw frisbees around, run your dog around. So there's some open, some flexibility on that aspect of it. But it will be completely revegetated, at the very least with a conservation mix.
So the parking that's going to be there, is that going to be there mainly for access for people who want to use the trail?
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it
it's
basically
there
comes
now.
off of Bird Street right here. Yeah.
You're talking about, and you'll use the existing
I'm
lot.
sorry, what?
You'll be using the existing lot.
There's sort of a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's sort of an area where people come in. So it's located close to that area.
Yeah.
There's a fence a gate right about here that we now have locked. But when this is all done, this will be open for the public. So yeah, it'll be in that kind of, right when you go through the gate, there's sort of that open area.
And you're not going to have any lighting, so it'll be
No lighting.
day use only.
Days, yeah.
And signage, informational signs. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, definitely. So we'd like to have near the parking area some kind of a simple signboard, kiosk, maybe a signboard with maybe a little roof on it that talks about what's the role of this property from a flood resilience perspective. We've had a lot of interest from the educational program. So we had this really great Montessori school class come down and kind of look at how they would redesign this place. They just did a fantastic job. So we think that one of the users of this place will be schools in the area to see this is what we need to know and what we need to do to become more flood resilient is restore these type of places. So some kind of signage that could tell that story. I don't think much more than that.
But there are certain guidelines, for size sign and type and all that, and we can make that a condition that they be administratively approved.
Sure.
So that you don't have to come back about
Okay.
signs.
That'd be great.
Quick question. There's existing water main there and sanitary. Are those going to, with the excavation, is that going to affect that at all?
Yeah, no, we've nailed down the invert elevations of those, and they basically run across the property right about here. So this is the least amount of excavation up at this end of the property. And the plan is to protect those, armor the upstream side of those pipes with large stones, so that if the river ever does, which it may do, you know, this is a river that is pretty volatile here, that those will be protected. We don't have the final design done yet on this, but that would be one of the elements of the final design. And we would certainly want that to pass muster with the Public Works Department.
I guess the follow-up question then would be, not only is it protecting it when you're excavating it, but some consideration for Public Works to have access to it once the site is final. Does that make sense?
Public Works now has a right-of-way.
Okay.
It's a formal right-of-way they have, so that right-of-way won't change under changing ownership.
I'm just imagining a sort of a kind of a level approach to if they need to get to it. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you will be applying for a state wetlands permit?
Correct. State wetlands, we're having it reviewed by the state archaeologist. The other state permits that we'll be acquiring.
Any other questions from the board?
What was the name of the study that was the post-Irene? How was that?
It's called, we call it VERI. It's kind of the acronym, Vermont Economic Resilience Initiative or something like that.
Okay.
It was commissioned by the Agency of Commerce and Community Affairs, Community Development, and they picked a number of towns around the state and did this kind of like post-Irene assessment of what would be the, you know, like it was pretty specific, and that, again, that's where this particular project was identified as the top priority, is to restore this footprint.
Bike rack. Will you be putting a bike rack in the parking lot?
Be happy to.
Would we make that a condition?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that well, not the only, but we're limited on putting any permanent structures in, you know, things that have permanent foundations, because it's a floodplain. We don't want to be putting in expensive infrastructure that might get threatened by flood. But a bike rack, something that sits on the ground, you know, worst case scenario gets moved by a flood and be replaced.
Any other questions?
Mike, do we have anyone in the audience?
I'm going to
Oh,
ask.
okay.
Is there anybody here to speak to this project?
Okay, thank you.
What?
Nothing. Just the conditions that we want with it.
Yeah. We have to, there are conclusions that we have to reach. If you look on Brian's thing.
Just looking at that.
And I guess I'll read them for the record.
Yeah, she agreed.
Based on the foregoing findings of fact, the Brattleboro Development Review Board does or does not conclude that the proposed project will meet the standards for site plan approval of section 434 of the Brattleboro Land Use Regulation. And I did look that up.
I didn't bring my book.
acres?
It seems to be you can correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but that's the general, we prove that it meets the requirements of what the town would require
Yep,
for a
exactly.
project like this. The next finding of fact is section 436, which is local Act 250 review. Will it have any impact on the municipal what's the word? Utilities and or the schools or anything like that, and I don't think this will. 435. And it meets the conditional use approval, these Brattleboro zoning regs. And then, does it meet the standards for riparian areas, which is 334. Did you find it?
Yeah. Can we ask Brian again? It appears to.
Yeah, so in the draft decision, basically all the review criteria for all those different requests are kind of incorporated. I don't think it necessarily flagged everything as what particular review, so I don't think all of them are flagged for riparian review.
That has to do with access and spreading water and floodplain, which we've talked about. You see anything?
I don't see any concern.